Thanks again, Ray Otis, and we're back here in Washington where the Hurricanes taking on the Capitals in the fourth game of a six-game preseason log. And it's time once again for Kaiton's Corner, where you take center stage all season long. Just send us your emails to chuckk@carolinahurricanes.com. Any good question about hockey, and give us your full name, where you're emailing from, and we'll answer your question on a future second intermission. That's Chuck K, Chuck of the letter K, at carolinahurricanes.com, and we'll answer your question on a future second intermission, as we will for John Crono of Raleigh, who passed us along this question about the waivers. He was wondering, what is waivers in the NHL and what happens to a player when he gets placed on it? Well, now with the new collective bargaining agreement, there is no more waiver draft at the start of the season, and the players today with the salary cap more or less know where they're going to play based on their contract status. In this day and age, after a player has played through his first contract, whether it be a 2 or 3 or 4 year deal, normally, if a team is interested in extending that contract and he remains as a restricted free agent based on his performance, he will get what is called a one-way contract, meaning he will make major league money no matter where he plays. Some players will be on two-way contracts in which they will get a minor league salary if they play in the minors and a major league salary for every day they play in the majors. And it is those players, the players who have played more than 3 years in the league, 4 years if you're a goaltender, that you must put on waivers if you want to send them to the minors. So the waiver system basically in the NHL is this. If you don't want a player or you want to clear him off your salary cap sheet, and remember that the player's average salary through his contract is what the cap number is in terms of what teams can spend. Right now, that cap hovering around $50 million, and teams have to be below that cap figure. So if you send a player on waivers and he clears through, and the process, John, is very simple, he gets put on waivers. 72 hours later, if no team claims him, then he can be assigned to the minor leagues or released and bought out for 2/3 of the remaining amount of money on his contract over twice the term of the remainder of the contract. So that's basically how waivers work. You have a 72-hour period which you put that player on waivers. In the old days, players would not know when they were put on waivers. Now, with the agents and everything being so out in the open and disclosed in terms of salaries and what you have to do as a general manager, there is no reason to be covert about it. If a player goes on waivers, it's really good for him if another organization can pick him up, but it's also restrictive, as you might imagine, because of the salary cap. And teams, whether they spend all of the cap money that they're allowed to, or they institute their own budgetary cap, so to speak, as the Hurricanes and many other teams do. They'll spend considerably less than the maximum because that is what their business plan is. Well, that player knows that it's restrictive to a certain extent because even if he's put on waivers, he may not be picked up by another team. Because if he is picked up by another team, what has to happen is that a player has to be dropped from that particular hockey club. So, for example, if the Hurricanes were to put player A on waivers and say the Tampa Bay Lightning wanted to pick him up, then the Tampa would have to drop a player and certainly would have to stay within their budget. So the salary cap is important, and so waivers is a lot different than it used to be. It used to be that there would be a waiver draft of eligible players. As I said, players of over 3 years contract or more. You could only protect 18 skaters and 2 goaltenders. Today, there is no restriction. You now have monetary restrictions in terms of the salary cap, so there really isn't any need for the waiver draft anymore, and the waiver draft is not conducted anymore. But when you want to put a player on waivers, that's the situation, as I just explained. He's on the thing for 3 days. Nobody picks him up. He can be reassigned. And once he comes off your roster, obviously, whatever salary he was making comes off your cap figure and allows you a little bit more room as a general manager to either make a deal or to stay under that cap figure till further notice. So, John Crono of Raleigh, thank you very much for your question. I hope we've answered it as clearly as possible. And once again, if you've got a question about hockey, that's an excellent question. And we've been getting tremendous questions. So whether you're a new fan or a veteran fan of the NHL, well, we'll do this segment every single broadcast. here in the second intermission, where we'll answer any hockey question for you, whether it's about the technicalities of the business end of the game. I'll do the best I can on that, and also on the on-ice, the history of the game, rules, whatever's on your mind. I'm here for you here in Kaiton's Corner. Just email me to chuckk@carolinahurricanes.com. That's Chuck and the letter K at carolinahurricanes.com. Give us your full name, where you're emailing from, and we'll answer your question on a future second intermission, perhaps as early as Thursday night when the Hurricanes move to Columbus. I'm Chuck Kaiton.